Welcome back to the fourth video in our study design series. In this video, we will learn about cohort studies, different types, and strengths and weaknesses. Cohort studies are observational studies that follow a group of individuals, also known as a cohort, who share the same characteristic like an exposure across time. Once the group is identified, they are followed over time to track their health outcomes. A common example of a cohort is a birth cohort, or a group of people who were born around the same time. We know that people born around the same time in history tend to be exposed to the same international conflicts, political administrations, and policies. The Chernobyl crisis is a good example of a group in which a cohort study may be done, because we know all these individuals share a common exposure at one point in time and can be followed into the future for potential health outcomes. Cohort studies can be further broken down into prospective and retrospective studies, based on the point in time the study begins. Prospective cohort studies move forward in time once an exposure has been identified, following a group of subjects from the point of exposure into the future. Retrospective cohort studies go back in time, identifying a sample from a past exposure and following them into the present for any health changes that occurred. So let's think about the Chernobyl example I gave in the last slide. Because if we started pooling data today on all of those exposed, it would be a retrospective study because the exposure happened back in time. Some strengths of cohort studies include that they give us the ability to estimate rates such as incidence. They are also good for establishing temporality and have fewer ethical dilemmas, since you're observing study participants doing things that they naturally would do, or things that happened on their own without manipulating the exposure. Some limitations of cohort studies may be that they can be more time-consuming due to a long follow-up period. Increased dropout can also decrease validity of this study and is related to the fact that fewer participants makes the study less representative of the general population. Let's take a look at an example of a cohort study. Say you want to do a study on whether people who earn a college degree report less depression 2 years later than same-age peers who did not earn a college degree. And take a moment to see if you can identify the exposure and the outcome here. The exposure would be whether an individual gets a college degree, and the outcome would be depression. So why is a cohort study a good option here? Well, we are following a group of similar people over time, and it would be unlikely that a researcher would be able to manipulate an exposure like a college degree, leaving RCT out as an option. But it would be possible to follow a group of same-age individuals, some of which received a college degree along with controls who did not. Then the health outcome of depression could be observed in both groups. So to recap, video number 4 went over some important concepts of cohort studies. We discussed the difference between prospective and retrospective cohort studies, and we also went over some important pros and cons. Please continue to video number 5 to learn about the third study design we'll discuss, which is case control studies.